Hello everyone, my name's Misbah. Welcome back to another video. So it's the middle of March now, and even though it's not officially the start of spring, it feels very spring-like outside with the small spring flowers in bloom, and it's just very beautiful. So I've been glancing through the pages of the Country Diary of Nedwardian Lady. I talked about this book in January, and I'll just show you a page from March. I love the diary entries, the little poems, but I also love the watercolours. So here you can see, I'll just go close up, here you can see the beautiful watercolours showing the daffodils, and I think they are the flowers for March. So if your birthday is in March, then daffodils are your flowers. And this has inspired me to go for a walk and see if I can see some daffodils blooming. While I do my walk, I will also read a poem, and it's by an American poet called Emily Dickinson. Emily Dickinson didn't give her poems titles, so when you look for her poems, it's always the first line of the poem that you have to search for. And this one's called A Light Exists in Spring, and it's a beautiful poem, it's haunting, and it explains how there is a light that comes at the beginning of March that brings this beauty, and it leaves us with such a positive feeling. And if we try to explain it using science or logic, then we can't. But we just know that we're better for this feeling in nature. And then when it's gone, we're puzzled and it doesn't feel right. And she describes it as being as if trade had encroached upon a sacrament. So there's a puzzlement, as if something very coarse and vulgar had come into a religious ceremony, and that's how we feel when the beauty of the light is gone. So the first part of the video will be the walk and the poem, and I hope you enjoy that. And then in the second part of the video, I'm going to talk about one of my favourite books. It's by E.F. Benson, and it's Mapp and Lucia. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching.
A Light Exists in Spring by Emily Dickinson. A light exists in spring, not present on the year at any other period. When March is scarcely here, a colour stands abroad on solitary fields that science cannot overtake, but human nature feels. It waits upon the lawn. It shows the furthest tree upon the furthest slope, you know. It almost speaks to you. Then, as horizons step or noons report away, without the formula of sound, it passes and we stay. A quality of loss affecting our content, as trade had suddenly encroached upon a sacrament.
So now I'm going to talk about a book called Mapp and Lucia. It's by an English novelist called E.F. Benson. So E.F. Benson wrote many novels and short stories and biographies, but he is best remembered for the Mapp and Lucia series. It's a set of 6 books, and this is the 4th one, and this one is my favourite. So this takes place in a small seaside town called Tilling, which is based on E.F. Benson's hometown of Rye in East Sussex, and it features a house, Mallard's, which was actually E.F. Benson's own house there. That's now owned by the National Trust, and you can visit it. So the two characters are Mapp and Lucia. So firstly, Miss Elizabeth Mapp. She lives in Tilling. She owns a big house in Mallards. She is middle class and has servants and a private income. And she fills her days organising the social activities of her friends and neighbours. So she is Queen Bee in her social circle. She organises tea parties and bridge parties where they play cards. She sits on committees and judges art exhibitions and so on. She's quite devious, quite manipulating and incredibly bossy, and usually gets her own way. So she is this quite eccentric English character. Then the second character is Lucia. So her name is Emmeline Lucas, but she's known as Lucia to her friends. In the earlier books, she lives in a Elizabethan town called Riseholme, so she has a beautiful Elizabethan house there, and she starts off married, but in this book she's a widow, and you never really see her husband. He's a background character, but she has a great platonic friendship with her friend George, or as she calls him, Giorgio. And I think it's one of the best friendships in literature. They spend hours and hours together. They play music, they play the piano, they paint, and they sit and gossip for hours. And she is incredibly pretentious and snobbish, and she is Queen Bee of her circle in Riseholme. And the reason why this story, this novel, works so well is because in this book, Lucia comes to Tilling and she rents Mallards from Miss Mapp. So the custom is that in the summer holidays, the residents of Tilling rent their houses out to earn some extra money. So Lucia rents Mallards, and then Georgie comes and he rents a small cottage near there. So you have the clash of the two titans of Mapp and Lucia. And that's what makes it so funny. These incredibly bossy women who set out to bring each other down. And what they argue over, what they fight over, just seems so trivial. So, for example, Lucia is renting the house Mallards, but Miss Elizabeth Mapp insists that that means that she does not have access to any of the fruit trees in the garden. She only has access to the house. She can walk in the flower bed areas, but she can't actually pick any of the fruit. And she instructs the gardener to pick the fruit, take it to the greengrocer's and sell it there. And then Lucia has to go and buy the fruit from the greengrocers. So in return, Lucia retaliates by telling the gardener that he must neglect the fruit trees and spend all his time mowing the lawns and tending to the flower beds. And then she has this conversation with Elizabeth where she explains that she's paying his wages and she will decide what the gardener does. So they exchange, they have arguments and they exchange insults, and they're always wrapped in the most layers of the most polite language. And that's what makes this book so incredibly witty. If you like plays like The Importance of Being Earnest, and you love that sense of Englishness where insults are given in very polite language. So for example, Cecily and Gwendolyn, when they are having their tea party in The Importance of Being Earnest, and they're actually insulting each other. If that's your style of humour, then you will love this. I find it a really comforting, cosy read because I love the tranquility of the scenery, the beautiful countryside, the seaside town, the eccentric English characters, and it's quite cozy because nothing bad ever really happens. We just have arguments about bridge parties or tea parties or, very trivial things. But these events are incredibly important to the two ladies, and they are always plotting and scheming of how to get the upper hand and bring their opponent down. So it's such a witty, interesting read. So I really recommend it. Mapp and Lucia by E.F. Benson. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it interesting. See you next time.